right. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of my favorite subjects right now, and a lot of it has to do with social engineering. If you read the description here, I am a huge fan of social engineering, the psychology behind it, what happens with people, and I'm a huge fan of AI. Like, I'm an AI geek, I'm a nerd. I've been playing with like deepfake lab and some of those AI tools for like 5 years, back when they were still actually developing deepfake lab, and it took an entire day to do like a 30-second clip. But it's always fascinated me, and what got me into computers was actually, I used to be into photography, back when we used to actually do film and then go to the dark room and do all that. And then I was in the Navy. When I was in the Navy, one of the guys that I worked with had an Amiga 500. And he showed me that you could scan a photo and digitally change it. And I was hooked. That was it for me. I'm not going to tell you when that was, because that was a long time ago. But I got into it because of the graphics and stuff, which is why I really love some of the AI stuff that we have now and some of the tools that we can do, especially in the Gen AI side. But I'm fascinated by how this is being used against people. Now, I'll say this, if you've talked to any marketing departments and they talk about AI, it's usually surrounded by some terrible FUD, or fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and I don't like that. Like, it's, I don't know, they're trying to sell you everything. I don't know if you've noticed, but anymore, if you say AI, the venture capital companies want to throw money at you, so everybody is AI everything, right? It's AI on the blockchain with zero trust or whatever, okay? They just start throwing stuff together like that to get funding. It's pretty amazing. There are some folks doing really cool stuff with AI. And not to plug too much, I don't work for them or anything, but Gardair down there, if you've talked to them, they do some really cool stuff with agentic AI. So we're going to have this stuff in our lives now, and it is going to change our lives fundamentally. And I say this, it's the same way that the internet changed our lives and how we live every day. It's the same way computers changed our lives, if you were around in those days. I went to high school and they taught us how to type on a typewriter, folks, okay? There's a couple of us around like that, okay? Our lives have been through turmoil a couple of times. This is just another one of those times. But it's going to be part of us moving forward. There's no going back. The thing about technology is we do want to embrace technology. My wife is a technophobe. She hates anything AI. She's like, there is no Alexa downstairs. There is no AI. I run Home Assistant for a lot of things, so I have my own voice thing going on downstairs now. And she's like, I don't want it down here. And I keep reminding her that there was a time when elevators were technology. People are like, I'm not riding that thing. I don't trust it. And at some point in time, a chair was actually technology. It's in our lives now every day. We're going to see more and more of that with AI. So my name's Erich Kron. I'm a security awareness advocate for KnowBe4, if you know who they are. I've been in the industry since the 1990s. My first network was Windows 3.1 on a Lantastic network, which was very, very long ago. But I've worked in lots of different areas. I spent 10 years with the Department of Defense, where I ended up the security manager at what's called the 2nd Regional Cyber Center for the U.S. Army. So we did the network infrastructure across all North America for the U.S. Army. I helped deploy the U.S. Army's Active Directory. I was a domain admin there. And I've been in the trenches for a long time. Now I get to go tell stories and do things like that. So I love my own voice. It's why I'm here speaking. So enough about me. I will warn you all. This is only the second time I've done this slide deck, so if it goes horribly wrong, my bad, okay? But this is what we're going to talk about, how it's being used in real-world attacks, the differences between all the different stuff and practical steps. So, first of all, social engineering. Again, huge, huge fan of social engineering. The fact is, humans are targets. It doesn't matter where you look or how you look. The stats are kind of out there. So it's an issue that we really have to pay attention to. And it's one of the things that AI is really good at exploiting is our people side of things. It's always interesting. This is from this year's Verizon DBIR. Now they're saying like 60% involved a human element. But then they also go on to say things like, oh, X number of percent involved credential reuse, which is a human element, right? And things like that. So people are a problem. Of course, vulnerabilities are exploited pretty significantly. There's lots of things we got to do. It's not all just the people problem. But the people problem is being greatly hindered by AI. So social engineering is a key attack vector, right? We kind of talked about this. QR code phishing. How many of you know about all the vishing, or the ishings, right? There's phishing, vishing, smishing, and someone used the word quishing. And if I ever find out who they are, I'm very upset with them. I hate that word. I cringe every time I hear it. So QR code phishing, not quishing, folks, okay? Remember that. Please don't perpetuate quishing. It's what? Toad? Oh, God. Telephone-oriented attack delivery. Okay, whatever. Whatever. I'll stick with vishing on that one, okay? I'm not going to run around saying toad and have to explain what that means. Oh, you were attacked by a toad. The hell's going to go for that, right? Okay. So here's where I think the big problem is. We're having all this fear, uncertainty, and doubt about, like, deep fakes, right? Everyone's heard of deep fakes, voice deep fakes, video deep fakes. Oh, my gosh, they're going to change the world. And yeah, they're a problem. But here's where I think the bigger problem comes into play, is the efficiencies that bad actors are gaining using AI to generate attacks. And I'll tell you right now, when it comes to like a phishing email, does it matter if it's AI generated or human generated? Not in the least bit, right? The only difference is you can generate them faster, and I have an example of it here, you can translate and localize, which is a game changer. So, when we talk about people, there's a couple reasons why we fall for this. And I'll tell you, in all my years of doing this, in my younger years, I used to have that mentality that was, the users. Oh, God, the users did it again. Oh, my God, the users are terrible. It's, we've gained a bit of a reputation like that. Y'all seen the Saturday Night Live skit where the guy walks in and he's like, move. Okay, we're not always the best people, and we tend to look down on users at times. But here's the deal. There's reasons why people fall for this stuff. Our brains work in a way, this is through Daniel Kahneman explained it this way with the systems of thinking. And system one thinking is what we do when we're kind of in that autopilot mode. Anyone ever drive on a long trip and you get there and you're like, where'd that 5 miles go? Like you're steering the car, you're following the speed limit. Unless you're in Florida or drive a BMW, you may have used your turn signal, right? If y'all have driven around here, you know what I'm talking about. All right? It's like, people are like, I'm not telling them I'm going that way because they will get in the way, right? But yeah, we go into that mode where we're actually able to do stuff without thinking a whole lot. That's system one thinking. The thing about system one thinking is it takes a very little amount of energy. And believe it or not, our brains are a huge consumer of our calories every day. We use a lot of calories in thinking. Our bodies, we want to stay in a dumb state as much as possible. Well, system two thinking is where we get out and we do the problem solving, the critical thinking kind of stuff. All right? And why this is important is system one thinking is where we fall back to when we're in a heightened emotional state. It's our fight or flight, it's our flee type stuff. It's what we do when we're under a bunch of pressure. The problem is we make a lot of mistakes when you do that. Who here has made big decisions while they're really freaking out and it worked out well? Yeah, probably didn't work out well, did it? Did it? Okay, well, fair enough. Sometimes we get lucky, right? Yeah. Like Colin said, that clock's right twice a day. It's sometimes we get lucky with that, but for the most part, we tend to make mistakes with that. It's the critical thinking part where we figure out stuff. This is where the social engineering comes in. The fear, the emotional tweaking, and all that is designed to get us into system one thinking, where we make mistakes and we transfer out a bunch of money. That's what it is. That's why, I don't know about y'all, I've never seen a phishing email that said, hey, whenever you feel like it, you want to go pick up some gift cards, or if you get around to it today, you want to wire some money out, right? That doesn't happen. It's always like, you got to do this now or else. That's because they're pushing us for that. So it's important to understand why we make the mistakes. This is also why throughout my career, when people have made mistakes, and I go and talk to them, I implore you all to be reasonable with them, Because we may look at something and we may go, how did you not see this for what it was? It was so freaking easy to spot, but you're not the one that's under the pressure. And timing plays a lot to do with it too. When I first started speaking, this was about 9 years ago. I joined KnowBe4 and I reported directly to the CEO. I was like 2 months into our 90-day, what do you call it? Yeah, anyways. Yeah, trial period, probational period. Yeah, all that kind of stuff, right? I was easy to fire. Let's put it that way. And I'm at the airport getting ready to get on a plane, and I get a meeting request from our CEO, and it says, Erich, I need to talk to you about some of the things I heard about your presentations. And I could not hit accept fast enough. I mean, this is the boss man. So I'm getting ready to get on a plane. I hit accept, and my own team rickrolled me, which was just wrong, okay? It was one of the simulated ones that they were doing to me. At first, I was mad. I was like, oh, come on, man. And then I started realizing, yeah, my presentations were starting to show up online. They could see where I went. They could see who I reported to through LinkedIn. And all that information was actually publicly available. But I was like, man, this stinks. One of my other colleagues, her name's Anna Collard, incredibly smart gal. She actually started popcorn training, which we acquired, but now she's on our team. She got into a car in, I forget where she was speaking, but she gets into the Uber and they're taking off and she gets a message on her phone that says, hey, there's a problem with Uber. And she clicks on it and sure as hell, it's our team. Just happened to get her at the same time and hit her with the simulated one because of the timing. The ironic part is she had to do the remedial training, which is a training course she designed. Okay, yeah, it doesn't always work perfectly, but what's that? I think she did pass. I think she did, yeah. Yeah, but it goes to tell you, I mean, even those of us that are in it every day can get messed up by this kind of stuff. And AI is making it easier to do that. So use cases for phishing for AI mostly can be used to generate those phishing emails, but it's the translations and localizations that they do some cool stuff with. Building profiles of victims. Now, a lot of times we have these breaches, and they always gloss over the part where they're like, oh, there were no social security numbers or credit cards in this breach. Yay. And then you start looking at it, and you're like, well, yeah, but this was a medical breach. And now if I'm a social engineer and I know you had a procedure on such and such a day in such and such a hospital, if I know that information about you, man, I can run some amazing pretexts based on that, okay? If you've ever had a surgery here in the US, it's like for months you're getting these letters like, oh, this is the lab guy. I took the lab from the blood from the phlebotomist, walked 3 steps, handed it to this person. We're not in your insurance. That'll be $300, right? Why wouldn't I just throw myself in the mix and start doing stuff like that? The Ticketmaster breach, okay? People were like, but it was like hundreds of millions of people, right? If I know you went to the Taylor Swift concert on this and this a day, and you were in this row in this seat, how hard would it be for me as a bad actor to put something together and say, hey, I saw that you were at this, we're having a flash concert that we haven't released yet. $500 gets you tickets. I know you were on this seat and da-da-da-da-da, and you're a Taylor Swift fan. People are gonna jump all over that. It's money in the bank. So that information that's getting stolen is actually extremely useful. And the more we see the AI out there putting these things together and pulling from different breaches and combining this information, it's pretty wild what some of the OSINT tools will do right now, even without full agentic AI doing this. But you can pull together an amazing profile on a human like that. And if I know some things that you believe are somewhat private, and I reference those, I have your trust. So we got to be careful with some of that stuff. This was interesting to me. This was done by the X-Force, which is an IBM thing. And they were talking about here, this is a X-Force click rate, 18% on their average phishing that they did in Red Team. This was the company average click rate. Okay, cool. This was a human designing it. Just a normal human, not their X-Force, because they're super great at 4% more. Y'all remember that if you want to sign a check. 4% better on X-Force. Anyways, The AI one here was 11%. Okay, so AI wasn't as good at fooling people as some of these other ones, but this is what was interesting. They said it takes about 16 hours to craft these emails. The AI one was done in 5 minutes with 5 simple prompts. That's your difference. That's where it gets scary. I really believe that humans are going to be able to think a little bit better outside the box and put together some of these if they're doing the attacks like that. But the sheer volume that it's running at is huge. There's been a couple of the phishing as a service groups now that are offering AI generation and translation as part of the phishing as a service offerings. So it's coming down to the lower level folks and being offered like that. Vishing, of course, the voice phishing, it gives you very small hands. I'm referencing the picture. Come on, it was kind of funny. Okay, anyways. How many of you have seen the things like there's a warrant out for your arrest or heard of people getting those calls? Yeah, my stepdad got one of those. My stepmom was in surgery, and he got a call like that, and he was already under a lot of stress. They got him to log into his machine and download some software, and they took over while she's in surgery, and then they told him he was going to go to jail if he didn't pay the fine. So they walked him through logging into the bank. The only problem was with being under so much stress, and he had suffered a stroke about a year before that stress, he couldn't remember his password to log into the bank. And they got a call saying his wife was out of surgery. He said, I've got to go, hung up on him, took off, and told my sister-in-law about it at the hospital. And she was like, hold on a second, wait a minute. But the only thing that saved his bacon was he couldn't remember his password to his bank account. And that's scary, man. That is really scary. But they're also doing the stuff, we've kidnapped your family member. And yeah, they are using some AI stuff to do that in the background. But that's been going on since before the deepfake stuff too, where they have a lot of noise in the background and it sort of sounds like a kid. And when you're under emotional duress, especially if you like your kid and you want him back, which is sometimes optional if you have teenagers, I'm sorry, but sometimes you're like, can you keep them for a couple of days? I'll throw in a few extra bucks if you'll, but this kind of stuff is happening. That's scary. I hate this one. But yeah, it's going on. There's not a new one, but getting messages. I worked with a reporter here in Tampa, actually. They got a message that said, we turned on your camera while you were in an adult site. We're going to drop it to all the people in your contacts, blah, 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 blah. But what was interesting about this one is they said, just to show you we're not screwing around, here's your address. And they had an address in there which happened to be the reporter's parents, and a picture of the house that they pulled from Google Street Maps. Now, you want to talk about something that's going to freak someone out. You show them a picture of your house and say, you pay us or else. Man, but all that stuff can be done manually, but you can also use AI to go out and do it. So smishing, of course, that's text message phishing, same thing, generating new stuff, doing that, building the profiles. And what I've seen that was interesting is some of these can be used when they initially contact you and people get back in contact with them. That'll be run by an AI-driven chatbot at first until they've got the person hooked, and then an individual will take over and continue the scam down that way. So it's an easy way for them to make that a little bit more efficient going down that route. And these chatbots are pretty amazing, man. I mean, really amazing. I'll talk about that in a second here. And then quishing. I just hate that word. Spinning up the websites behind it, stuff like that. Of course, if you travel a lot, you see these all the time in the airport on the tables and stuff. What's to keep me from going in, dropping down another QR code on top of things? Nothing at all. And then I capture your stuff. We see them on the parking meters, stuff like that. This is going on quite a bit. And I saw a very interesting one in Southern California where they actually sent letters to people in the mailbox. Letters. Remember that thing in front of your house that collects garbage? They actually sent a letter, and it said, hey, this is from the city. You were parked on the street overnight when we were doing street sweeping, and you have a $53 fine. And then it gave a QR code and said, scan here to pay. So, boom, they're scanning it. And there's some psychology behind that. $53 is enough that a lot of people are not necessarily going to fight that. You know, they're going to grumble about it, but you're not going to spend a day going after something like that. It's believable. It would have happened overnight when you were probably sleeping, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a little bit behind that, and we can break that down more if you're bored later. But that kind of stuff can be done, and then the OSINT stuff. Fun story about these. I live in a gated community up a little bit north. It's called Trinity. And we had new gates put in. They were horrible. It was a horrible mess. So what they did is they put up a big sign outside the gate that said, to learn how to use the gate system, follow this QR code. And I was this close to rickrolling my whole damn neighborhood. I figured if I did that, though, the HOA would be out there measuring my grass every day. Like, oh, yeah, you want to play games, huh? Right? But, I mean, people are trusting these things. Y'all remember the Super Bowl, where it bounced around for 30 minutes while there was a collective sigh of horror through the security community? Yeah. So they're out there. And then this I thought was really, really cool. How many of you heard about this? $25 million transferred out due to a Zoom call. Okay. What was cool about this is we're on the cusp of being able to have live deepfakes that are believable. There's still usually some movement, some problems with it at this point, but give it a year and maybe even less, and it's going to be something that's happening. But in this one, what they did is they devised a plan to do this Zoom meeting, and they scripted the entire meeting. They went out, they got video and stuff from these executives, and they built deepfakes of each of these executives, and they included one other person, a finance person, in the call. So they spun up this call, completely scripted, people talking back and forth about this transfer they needed to do. You had the one guy in the background who had nothing to do with talking to anyone, which is my favorite type of Zoom meeting. I don't know about y'all, right? You're just like, yeah, you do it. Well, they cut the Zoom meeting off early. And it was followed up by a message to that finance individual and said, hey, you heard us talking about this. You heard us discussing it. We need to get this money sent out. We're not going to bother spinning up a whole new Zoom meeting. And we've pretty much all been on one of those meetings that's ended in a dumb way, right? So it was very believable. And what did they do? They wired out $25 million. But that was all like a movie script with Zoom. I thought that was incredibly clever to be able to do that. Now, soon will we be able to do this in real time? Yeah, we absolutely will. But yeah, this was a lot of money. And then if you know anything about KnowBe4, we sort of hired a North Korean guy. Whoops, right? Who hasn't, okay? No, really. What happened here is this person, they interviewed 4 Zoom meetings. They were on 4 Zoom interviews. The guy really knew his stuff, and I was hoping my buddy Colin would be here. I think he was involved in the interview process when he worked for us. He said this guy's smart, and Colin knows his stuff. So it was for an AI position, higher-end AI developer position. And we did background checks on this guy, which all passed, et cetera, because it was a stolen identity. And one of the things he did is in his resume and the stuff where we were talking to him, he provided a photo of himself, which we later found out this is a photo he provided, but this was the original that they used. They did an AI little face fix on there to make it look more like him. We hired them. One of the things that he said, which we now know is a big time key, is he said, look, I'm moving up to Seattle. Can you send my laptop and stuff up there? I'll pick it up there and start work up there. I'm in the middle of moving. So we shipped it to Seattle. Somebody picks it up there, takes it. As soon as it comes online, and I mean as soon as it comes online, weird stuff is going on. And so red flags up. We called the guy and said, hey man, what's going on? You know, what's all this stuff you're doing? And he said, oh, well, I'm having problems getting connected to the router, and someone said this stuff will work it. We're like, okay, we hung up, and they're like, yeah, not believing that. And they cut his access, okay? It was like 12 minutes, and we cut him off the network. And of course, I will say this because we have to. We're talking about this. He had no access to any real information. It was our training during that time. So for the first couple weeks, we don't get anything. So nothing was stolen, but that's where we found out about this. This is going on all over the place, okay? And I like this quote: if you're hiring contract workers, you either are interviewing or have already hired a North Korean. It's going on all over the place. What they did here is this laptop went to a laptop farm in a apartment. They used a Raspberry Pi that they would VPN into, and it acted basically like a KVM for them. So we couldn't see a direct remote connection to the machine, okay? And there's been some busts of these laptop farms lately, sometimes up to 70 laptops sitting there running the whole time. And what they're after is money. They're not even trying to steal information. I mean, if you throw it in their lap, they're taking it, they're rolling with it. But they're funding the regime through the finances of being on payroll. And I'm not kidding you when I say, I mean, I've talked to a lot of people since we blew this one wide open and started talking about it openly. But I've talked to a lot of people that are like, they were great employees until we found out. Like, they're really trying to hold on to those jobs, and they're doing good work. Sometimes, like on this high-end AI thing, we think what they probably would have done is throw it off to somebody else just to put a butt in a seat. They would eventually fail. But this other guy is running around doing interviews. And we also believe that in a lot of cases during the interview, they have another person sitting there. So when you ask them questions that may be a little tricky, they're furiously firing it off into the AI, looking up stuff through ChatGPT so that that person looks really smart in their responses. So this is a real thing, and there's a lot of money being made with this. They believe there are thousands of people that are working in our companies that are actually sending money back to North Korea. So what's that? No, they're not really even spying or stealing. It's just about money. Yep. Yeah, it's just about the money because they're so heavily sanctioned. So it's pretty crazy how much stuff is going on and how much they're using this. If you're talking about like OSINT and location finding, I did this, we were at a conference and one of the guys a couple days later posted this up. Where in the world is so-and-so after an awesome whatever? I was off to this location. Names have been removed to protect the innocent. So I took 3 of these photos and said, where the hell is this? And ChatGPT nailed it. Toronto, Canada, talking about which square they're in, and even it gives a total breakdown of it. But image 1, it said, we know there's a bar district, but based on the other photos that you provided that turned out to be in Toronto, we believe this was in the bar district in Toronto. So it's actually looking at all this stuff together. I mean, there's no way I would have figured out where that person was just based on that. It took like 2 minutes, and I knew exactly where that individual was from these pictures. So this is the kind of stuff where it can be a little bit dangerous and a little bit scary if you start thinking about it. Have you ever LLM'd yourself? You know, it's kind of like the Googling yourself. And it will or won't answer sometimes. Sometimes you can push it into it. It answered for me because I'm considered a public figure because I do public speaking, I guess, but I did some other people and it wouldn't answer that. I think I probably could have broken it by pushing a little bit further, but at least there were some guardrails in there. And it came up with all kinds of stuff. One of them, it said I was a U.S. Army veteran, which I wasn't. I was a contractor. I'm a Navy veteran. So it's not always right, but the information it pulled up, this was like pages of stuff about me. Stuff I don't even think I knew. Like, I was like, I sound pretty damn cool, man. I was like, but try this sometime and see what it comes up with about you. Because you might be surprised. Now, if I'm just a bad actor, I'm trying to put stuff together for a pretext, this is great information. So AI platforms, some of the common ones, LLMs, we all know about that. Some of the threats that we have with that. Uploading of sensitive data. In your organization, if you don't have a policy about what information you can put in to be summarized or looked at by an LLM, you're doing it wrong. You need to fix that. Because it does an awesome job taking the quarterly finances and fixing them. But you really don't want to be throwing that in a public LLM, right? Hallucinations are poisoning, so skewed results. They can absolutely create wrong results, and if you're not careful, like that one guy did he was a lawyer, And yeah, the judge wasn't real happy because it turned out these cases that he referenced they didn't exist. So a little lazy. I think the guy might have actually faced disbarment over that because he went back to the judge and went, no, this is what it is, because he asked ChatGPT to give more details. And it was all BS, guys. Like, there was nothing even close to that. But also poisoning. And I was just at a conference not long ago. I was talking to somebody. They were talking about one of their coworkers that decided to mess with things. And they started posting up pictures on like social media and stuff. It was a llama with their name on with it. So ChatGPT started seeing them as llamas and associating them with a llama, which is fantastic. But you can poison those results sometimes by doing stuff like that, okay? So don't trust it. Of course, the information and data gathering and the chatbot, the human stuff, and we'll talk about that. Gen AI obviously is creating stuff. Yeah, we got to worry about the audio and video impersonation, manipulated documentation. So I'm seeing where folks are going in. They're, swiping a bunch of stuff. You know the old Walmart shuffle, where it's like one for me, one for nothing. And they're taking stuff out there, and then they're using AI to generate receipts for these items and then returning them. So they'll steal stuff, and it's not always like Walmart because they tend to have some better things in place, but a lot of smaller organizations, they'll steal it, they'll shoplift it, go back with a fake AI-generated receipt and return the stuff. So that's one of the things that's going on. Face or voice swoop, yeah, and misinformation, disinformation. If any of you are on that social media stuff you might have heard about, it's terrible. Don't believe anything you see there. And then agentic AI. This is the stuff I'm really interested in. The difference between agentic AI and the other AIs is agentic AI, you throw a goal at it and say, get out of here and go do your thing. Where with like LLMs, it'll ask you different steps. Do you want me to add this to the picture? Do you want me to add that? With agentic AI, it just goes out and does things. This is like wild, wild west craziness out there. It can do some really cool stuff. I've been playing with a couple of different ones, and they can do some really cool stuff. You can do automated recon and penetration testing, persistent threats due to evasion. It can evade things very easily or help evade things within networks. Credential stuffing. It can take all these passwords from usernames and passwords and throw them at stuff to try to log in a very automated fashion.